We'll have the 7th annual International Champions Cup on the networks of ESPN and ESPN Deportes, and it all starts tonight with our preview show hosted by the ESPN FC crew at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ESPN2. Then we'll have the first match of the tournament between Fiorentina and Chivas. Okay, the deadline for the Texans to sign franchise player Jadeveon Clowney came and went yesterday, and according to Adam Schefter, the team has no trade in the works for the Pro Bowler. Coming off an early playoff exit last season and currently without a GM, the Texans are still attempting to better protect franchise QB Deshaun Watson, who was sacked a league-high 62 times last season. All right, joining us for this conversation, we still have Dominic Foxworth in studio. Also, Keyshawn Johnson joining us. So, Key, we'll start with you here. What is the ceiling for the Texans?
You know, I think if Deshaun Watson can stay healthy and they can keep the receiving core together, get Jadeveon Clowney in, not necessarily into camp, but to start a football season and pair him with J.J. Watt, I think they can make a strong run within the division. The AFC is up to Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and New England. They can fall right in there. If they can surpass Indy with Andrew Luck and that talent that they have over there, I think that they have an opportunity to make a strong run and get to the Super Bowl. Now, Deshaun has to stay healthy and continue to build on the success that he's had over the last couple of years, learning under Bill O'Brien. So I believe that they can be a threat to make it to the Super Bowl and come out of the AFC.
Oh. That's a bit of a stretch for me. Like, I think they'd be lucky if they could win the division. They have the toughest schedule of anybody in that division. I think one of the worst schedules of any of the teams in the NFL in the coming season. And if they're going to get anywhere, it's going to be on the strength of their defense and keeping their quarterback upright. Their offensive line was one of the worst in the NFL, and they did make some draft picks, and they're returning some players from IR to improve that. But if you look at the playoff teams from last year, they're all teams that learn how to protect the quarterback. And Charlie said that off the top. They gave up more than 60 sacks, and their quarterback was beat up so bad that he could not get on an airplane. It's hard for me to get behind a team in this modern NFL where it seems like secondary play and offensive line play are becoming more and more important. And their secondary is getting slightly worse when they lose Tyrann Mathieu, and their offensive line has been terrible for a long time. I'm not sure how anyone – I would bet more likely to bet against them missing the playoffs than making it.
But I could never bet against Deshaun Watson if he's healthy.
Right.
Never.
Right. That may be. The question is, what's their ceiling? And Key just hit it for me. Deshaun Watson, the things you were just saying about Dak Prescott that we said about Russell Wilson or Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson's got it. I took them to win the national championship because I'd seen his performance the year before and thought he's going to be the best player on the field. With the money on the line, he'll do something to win the game, one way or another, which he did. He's that type of player. Now, the offensive line was a problem. The secondary was a problem. The offensive line has been buttressed. We'll see if it's good.
They got 2 first-round picks.
And they brought in a veteran, too. Who was it? But they brought in a veteran help, too. But the point is, it should be better than it was last year. And the secondary is still a question. But let's table the secondary for a second. If the offensive line is good enough, and anyway, they started doing things, moving the pocket around. They made adjustments anyway with a bad offensive line that really helped Deshaun Watson. They have a lead receiver, a guy who's a totally elite guy.
3 of them. All 3 of those guys. Not all 3 are elite, but all 3 are very good.
Right, and
Fuller,
1 is elite.
Yeah,
and then you have a real running back. You have a running game. You have a front 7. You have that's really good against the run and getting to the quarterback. So in terms of who's going to win the line of scrimmage, overall, the Texans are going to win the line of scrimmage in a lot of games with a special quarterback and a receiving core in a run game. It comes down to me to the secondary. In this league, Dominique, you talk about this, in this league, you got to have some kind of a secondary probably to win. But that's their Achilles heel. Most teams have one. I think if we're talking ceiling, it's Super Bowl.
Well, most teams, the secondary is important because of the rise of the RPO. You can't really get away with playing a lot of zone. You need to be able to play man-to-man so that your guys don't get caught in the kind of two-way, no-win situation of the RPO. They are losing the type of guys who do that. What Tyrann Mathieu meant to that defense was huge, and he is gone now. They try to replace him with Roby, who was
and they weren't good anyway in the secondary.
Yeah, and they try to replace him with Roby out of Denver, who I think is a very good player, but he's not as good as Tyrann Mathieu. So I think that's going to hurt them. Their defense, their front 7 is awesome at stopping the run. Too bad it seems like people are running, or not seems like, the facts support that teams are running less and less as the years go on. So I don't know how important a skill that is anymore. But Merciless, Clowney, Watt, they put pressure on the quarterback. That matters. Their defense is going to be what takes them as far. You brought up Russell Wilson earlier. I think that is the model that they can follow. A bad offensive line, a great quarterback, and a good defense. That old model.
What's wrong with that model?
They didn't win the Super Bowl once the
that
O-line.
seems like that seems like a great model. The Russell Wilson model seems like a great model. You got a great defense. You got a quarterback that can get the job done. You got a couple wide receivers that can get it done. You got a solid running game. The offensive line, yes, that's been a problem. But look, this is a different year. We don't know. I know you mentioned, Fox, that the schedule was going to be brutal. We don't know what those teams that they're going to play against are going to wind up like. Every year we say, oh, this team's going to be great or this team's going to be bad, and somebody comes out of nowhere like that. So I'm just betting that the Texans will have a better situation going forward than they had in the past.
And right, the difference between the Seahawks and the Texans this year is the secondary. That's what I was getting for. Like, that model is very similar, but you take out the Legion of Boom, which was the core of that defense, so the model cannot be completely recreated here. And I do think that some of the teams that they play, like the Saints, I'm pretty sure they're going to be good. They play the Pats, they're always good. These teams are teams that I feel like are reliably good teams, that it's not just going to fall apart from them. They have to play the Colts. They can't even, if they defense, and they don't even have the best defense in the division. They have the Jags in that division. That is a better defense.
When you talk about
what
the secondary,
will the Jags look like this year, though? See, that's another thing. When you start talking about the division and you start talking about teams that they're going to play, what are the Jags going to look like? Because there's a lot of disgruntled players over there. So at the end of the day, you don't know what that's going to be. So I would just wait to see.
Are we sure the Colts will continue to ascend? Like, that's right. But when you look at the difference between them and Seattle back then, Seattle actually had an offensive line before they made that Max Unger for Jimmy Graham trade. Then it fell apart, and then they were not the same team. They did not have the same level of success. In fact, I see the Texans as improving at the offensive line, at least in terms of the way they moved Deshaun Watson around, and maybe even in terms of the talent. Now, the secondary. Secondary is a problem. The Legion of Boom was excellent in that area.
But you don't have to run the same thing that the Legion of Boom did. Dominic, you played in the secondary.
Right.
I can protect my corners. Okay, I can do things that will protect them and not allow them to be exposed in the secondary. Romeo Crennel did not forget how to coach defense overnight. He knows what he's doing.
I think the part of that makes sense is that they are good up front, which allows you to pull a safety out of the box to help with different coverages. But it goes back to the original point that I was making. It seems like this league, the teams that are playing well on defense are teams that can play man coverage.
I'm
not sure that that they have that.
Speaking of defense, Jadeveon Clowney, there's still a big question mark surrounding him. He didn't get that long-term contract. What's the right move for him? Should he sit out or should he play?
Listen, you got to sit out because that's the only leverage you have. That's the only leverage you have. What else are you going to do? What's your move?
Key, I heard that response from Key. That you think he shouldn't?
Well, hold on, man. You don't sit out. And the reason you don't sit out is because there's between $16 and $18 million, depending on the franchise tag that you're going to be designated. He can be designated a defensive end pass rush specialist, or he can be designated an outside linebacker. Those numbers change, Max. I don't know if you knew that or not, but it's about a swing of $2.5 million. That's $1 million a game. Don't play the Le'Veon Bell game, especially when you want to get the free agency next year. Jadeveon Clowney would like to be a free agent to get the big money. You get your butt on the field, man. You go in there and you get on the field. You sign when it's right. Don't pass on that money of $16+ million messing around talking about I'm going to sit out the whole year. Nobody does that.
Here's the thing, Key. You might be right in terms of that analysis or the conclusion you draw in the spot. But the larger circumstance is the Pittsburgh Steelers and I think the league made a statement last year with Le'Veon Bell. Like, it may work what you're doing, but we're not going to let it work. We would rather sacrifice our chances in the playoffs than pay the players. But if players continue to do that, that could change in the next CBA.
And you got to realize is Le'Veon Bell was on his second Dominic, franchise tag.
Right.
This is Jadeveon's first. So it's a little bit of a difference there. I would hate to see the young man pass on about 16 to 18 plus $1 million messing around. I mean, I just would hate to see it.
I understand Max's point, but Jadeveon Clowney's his interests are not aligned with changing the way things are done in the CBA. His interests are aligned with maximizing his profitability right now. And I think that he is right. If he holds out, he's going to lose money that he may not recoup. And that's partially because of the structure of the CBA. But that's the world that the NFL players are living right now. So I believe that he has to go in and get that money that's out there, because chances are the team who doesn't have a GM right now are not going to sign him up to a long-term deal. There's nobody there who feels the job security to be able to commit to a player like that right now anyway.
Well, a long-term deal's gone.
All right,
I mean, they missed that deadline.
Yeah. Very true.
All right, Jadeveon Clowney missing only one game over the last 2 seasons. He missed 17 games combined in the course of his first 3 seasons.
Remember when people were calling him a bust? Not so much.
Keyshawn, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Dominic, sticking with us. But coming up, the Sixers gave Ben Simmons the bag and locked up their young core. Are they now